morning, everyone. Good morning. It is a surprise. We're thrilled to be here. The situation in the Philippines, the travel situation, is a little different than normal, so that's why we weren't really sure if this was going to work. And I, 2 weeks ago, got to be home for my brother's wedding. And they're here with his bride. And then just yesterday, last week, David got his papers to travel, and just yesterday he arrived. So we are thrilled to be here. And we're also thrilled by what we get to share with you, which is God is so faithful. This year, since we were here last, all of us, I know, have been through things that we never dreamt we would ever have to go through. And we were facing a challenge just with this incredible building project that was in front of us that I know would be a testimony of the Lord's faithfulness no matter when and how it was built. But being built in the middle of a global pandemic just made it all that more impossible and all that more giving glory to the Lord. And in every single situation that we encountered, which were daily, weekly, sometimes very regular, of major challenges, God just showed himself faithful again and again and again. And we knew that this journey that we were embarking on was going to be able to increase our capacity to do ministry. But I have to honestly tell you, I don't think we realized to what degree. It has been so incredible. It has brought so many new opportunities, open doors. And as we have moved through the season of construction and going forward to the season of ministry, God never wasted any opportunities to move in people's lives throughout every single step of the journey. And we now even see how God had bigger plans for us in the future than we had for ourselves when we started out for this. So yes, it is humbling, and we are so grateful, so grateful for the way that you all have prayed with us, have stood with us, have sown into this project, and we are thrilled to come to tell you that the building is finished. We know that the future, as we move forward, the Lord's going to continue to open doors. We thank you for your continued prayers and partnership as we move forward with this. And we're just really blown away by what God has done here. So our ministry has a lot of different arms. Obviously, during the pandemic, things changed a bit as far as who we were able to see, but everything is still going on. All of our trainings, our leadership school, all the rest is still very present. But I'd like to share with you our testimony, and so you can see a bit of what God has done.
More than a decade ago, the Lord gave us a vision of a home for vulnerable girls where they would be loved, discipled, and launched into the world as leaders with a kingdom mindset. In 2017, God miraculously provided the land. In 2019, we broke ground. Today, we are thrilled to announce that construction is finished. To each one of you who have journeyed with us, even through all of the added challenges of the pandemic, praying and giving so generously, we say thank you. While we have been building, God has been working. Some of our crew got saved. We were able to reach out to dozens of children in our neighborhood who have never heard the gospel, and God started a small church in our ministry space, bringing families together who share the vision of being mothers and fathers to the girls who will live here. Right now, we are working on appliances and furniture and deeply appreciate your prayers and continued support as we look forward with great anticipation to opening our doors. The transformation of this mountainside to a beautiful home and ministry space has been mind-blowing, but the transformation we are really excited about will be in the lives of every girl who will live here.
Amen. Good morning again. It's good to be here and to see all of you. Thank you, Pastor Billy, for always so welcoming and for the love, of this church to what we're doing in the Philippines. Thank you so much. There's so much to say, so much to share about what's going on. Of course, this change that has happened, throughout the world. It may have changed the way we live our lives, but it didn't change anything. What God is doing in the world. He is in this pandemic. God did not cause this pandemic, but He is in this, and He is at work. And what I'm going to share this morning is actually I would take off from what we have been hearing this morning. Pastor Billy was kind of talking about how God is in us and that He is within us. And even when we talk about how the kingdom, when John the Baptist was saying the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and Jesus was talking about the kingdom of heaven, He's not talking about something that would come, and like an outside force, but He's really talking about a change that's going to happen to the world. And it has begun, from that time since until today. So when we ask the question, what is God doing today? What's really the answer, and we kind of try to look at something outside of ourselves. But have we ever considered that what God is doing in the world today is you and me? That is what God is doing in the world. What is happening in the world? What is the action of God in the world? It's you. And sometimes that's where we fail as a church and as Christians, because we always kind of separate what God is doing, from us. But in fact, God lives in you and in me. And wherever you go, you're bringing the reign of God. Where you step into, you bring life, you bring joy, you bring hope, you bring faith, you bring God alive in every situation, because what God is doing is you. Amen. So I'm going to talk about from the letter of Paul to the church in Corinth. This is known as the love chapter in the Bible. It's the 1 Corinthians 13. And when we hear this chapter today, it will always be, probably in a setting where there's a wedding, or we're doing some Thanksgiving, and we talk about love, and the emotion that comes with it would always be this, like, nice feeling, about what is love. And that's true, in some sense. But really, when Paul wrote this letter to the church in Corinth, he was kind of frustrated. He was like, you're not getting this. Because there's so much strife and conflict and division, in the church. Actually, Paul spent more of his time trying to get this church get going, and be repaired with what's going on. So this letter was kind of coming in like that. Because Corinth at that time was known to be like the city of love. They have the biggest, the most magnificent temple of love. They serve the god Aphrodite amongst many other gods. And so they're supposed to be a city that knows what is love. But of course we know, we go back and read about what that meant at that time. It's actually a perversion of what is love. Aphrodite is served by 1,000 priestesses that are actually prostitutes. And the way that they serve and worship this god is a perversion that it became an insult to be called a Corinthian at that time. Anybody that's called a Corinthian at that time was like a person with no morals. But people flocked to that city all over the world. Corinth is located in an area where it's like a crossover. It's like this melting pot of the Asian and European cultures. So every seafarers and traders would pass through Corinth. They would save their money to go and worship at the temple. So this is the mindset of people. Love in Corinth. So 1 Corinthians 13, when Paul was writing this to the church in Corinth, he was telling them, this is the definition of love. It's not the love that you know. It's not the love that you're supposed to be, you're supposed to have known ever since. It's not that. He's coming from this real experience of love that he had witnessed at the road to Damascus, that he had seen in the lives of people. I'm sure that when he became a Christian and followed Christ, he was thinking about that man that he witnessed was stoned to death, Stephen. And he saw his face before he died. He had this countenance of just peace and of an angel seeing heavens open. What is that? That is a picture of love. And he probably knows stories or probably was there, and he saw the suffering that Jesus had to go through and all the persecutions of Christians. That is a picture of love. Sometimes the picture that we have today of love is so distorted. There's this song, a country song, in the place where I live in the Philippines. Amazingly, we love country songs. It's the only place, probably, in Asia or in my country where, you find people wearing cowboy boots, and we actually have a park there where you can ride a horse, and just. So anyway, there's this country song that's where it talks about when it comes to love, you don't count the cost. So it talks about a mother, it talks about soldiers, even talk about the cross. But the content of the song is actually saying that you have to count the cost. Because sometimes that's really the problem. When we talk about love, when it's love, you have to count the cost. You have to know what's coming behind this action of love. When Jesus died on the cross, and we have salvation today, this salvation, the cost that comes with it, is what was paid by Jesus on the cross. What we're enjoying today, the freedom that we enjoy today, is paid by the lives of so many soldiers and veterans, who are wounded and have been killed. That is the price. And when Paul was talking about the definition of love in 1 Corinthians 13, he was talking about the price that was paid. Why do we have this love? In the same chapter, Paul was also talking about even if I speak in the tongues of angels, if I don't have love, I have nothing. And then he ended it by saying that there are three things that abide: faith, hope, and love. Faith, hope, and love. But the greatest is love. Because we can hope, we can have faith, but if it's not founded on the solid ground of love, it is nothing. What do we have as a church? What do we have as followers of Jesus? What do we bring into the world? What do we infuse into the world? It is that was given to us. The very blood of Jesus that runs in the veins of the church. That is what we have. And that's what we bring into the world. It is this love. So I invite you to read with me 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 until verse 8. And it says this: love is patient, love is kind, it's not jealous, love does not brag, and is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own, is not provoked, does not take into account a wrong suffered, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, and love never fails. Amen. What were the issues that were the church in Corinth was facing at the time? There was division. There was actually fornication. There was suing each other, and bringing them to the courts of the unbelievers. To Paul, there was really, he cannot take that because he knew what was happening in those courts. There was a problem with the marriages of people. There was the eating of the meat. Can you believe that? Even just the meal is causing division in the church. There was also a conflict on who they're supposed to follow, on the headship and the covering. There was a problem with the Lord's Supper because the way that they celebrated the Lord's Supper at the time was it's a meal that everybody shares. And some people, they're going on, and have the meals without waiting for the others because of the social divisions. The slave owners and the slaves, the people that are working, and some people have separated themselves. There was also a division on spiritual gifts. The resurrection from the grave was causing a great debate between them. Even the collection of money. All these things. I don't know here with the church in the U.S., but these things, they're happening in the church in the Philippines. We're still facing these issues. We still have so many of this. We'll have trainings and seminars, and so we meet a lot of pastors, and the things that they tell us, it's just unbelievable. Like, that is happening inside the church. But it really is. Maybe we have not really moved so much from that situation that was happening in Corinth. Maybe what we have is just a form, an image. But what are we supposed to be as a church? Or maybe it begs the question, what am I? Who am I? In this world. There's this move. It's like a movement, today in the church where we're like putting so much effort to be part of what's going on. Like this drive to be relevant. But are we supposed to be that? Because if we live out the love of Christ, we will stand out. We will be so radical. We will have, we just project this image that it's so different. In the midst of darkness, when you light something, even just this small candle, it would be so radical from all the darkness that's around it. And we are supposed to be that. We are supposed to be that infusion of life into a world that is so lost and hopeless. That is who we are. But the enemy knows, and Paul talks about this. He was saying, the enemy is not flesh and blood. So consequently, that also means that anything that is flesh and blood is not your enemy. You are not supposed to be debating against that person who is against, who just chose not to be vaccinated. I know that's a really touchy issue here in the U.S. Or maybe who you voted for. I can say that. I'm not American, so I'm gonna leave, later. But that's not supposed to be bringing division to us as a church. The enemy knows those issues. And so he would bring all these things, and just put everything into the mix, and just like that, we're divided. Because he knows that one of the greatest weapon that we have is our unity in the love of Christ. That we're supposed to be united because of what Jesus has done on the cross. We're supposed to be doing all these actions that we're doing in the church, not because it's required, not because, oh, you're supposed to be a church, you're supposed to be helping this and that, you're supposed to be helping the work in the Philippines. No, you do it out of love. What do we have as a church? Music. Oh, we're good. Music. We have a multi-billion Christian worship. Music. That is so competitive, that so many even artists that are supposed to be secular are now putting up their Christian songs. Why? Because there's money in it. But is that what we have? No. What we have is love. This love, it's not just this fussy, nice feeling. No. This love that we have is paid by the blood of Christ that is so powerful. The greatest love of all is not what Whitney Houston has defined. It's not the love for yourself. The greatest is the love of Jesus dying on the cross. And there is no greater love than this, than for someone to lay down his life for his friends. You know why a lot of veterans know more about love than people who are supposed to be, call themselves, oh, I'm a Christian. Because a veteran knows the sacrifice. He had seen it in the life of his friend, dying for him, sacrificing his life for him. Love is sacrifice. What we're doing here, what we do as a ministry in the Philippines, what powers it is love. What drives it is love. What we do as a church is love. Maybe today we're supposed to to look at these verses about love, and when we say love is patient, and Jesus lives in us, we do not only say that Jesus is patient, that Jesus is kind. Probably we need to put our names here, and we say, David is patient. I can't really stand, this church member or this other pastor, but David is patient. David is kind. David is not jealous. You won't believe this, but among pastors, there's a lot of jealousy, in the Philippines. They see this building that was just built. This is actually true. When the pandemic happened and there was this lockdown, we are in the middle of building. We just started our foundations. And the city was on a lockdown. No construction materials. I cannot just go, there's no laws, or any of all this Home Depot that you have here. We have all these small construction supplies, shops that we go to, but they're all closed down. So what I did was to go, to all these big projects, building projects where they already bought materials, but all the older people went home. So I went and told them, you're going to lose money anyway. This material should go to waste, so let me buy those materials. And so that's how we were able to build. Aggregates, all these steel bars and everything. And we kept building. And so when everything opened up, all our neighbors, in that place were like surprised. Here's a 5-story building here that wasn't there yesterday. There is a price to pay. There is a price to pay to say that we are a follower of Christ. There is a price to pay to say that we are the church of Christ. There is a price to pay to do ministry. Every pastor here knows the price that has to be paid. You can't just be, It doesn't mean that you're not an ordinary person. You are. You're still you. But yet, there is a price to pay. There is a price to pay to say that I am a Christian. There is a price to pay. And you know all this. Everyone here who is involved in ministry, you know this. And the reason, that last line that says, love never fails. The reason why we don't fail as a church is because Jesus didn't fail. And Jesus will never fail. His kingdom will reign. We've been singing that over and over and over again. But what does this mean? What is the picture of that? The picture of that, again, is you. Living through all the challenges that you have to go through every day. This year, as you all probably know already, I buried my father. He's been in ministry for over 50 years. And as I was standing there watching him, breathe his last, I was asking God, where are you? Where are you? The only answer I can get is, God was actually there in the middle of that. The death, the suffering that my dad has to go through, God was in the middle of all that. Because God is what God has been doing in my life growing up. That is God in action. So maybe now what we're supposed to do as people of God is to just act out of this love so that the world will see love that is alive, that is in motion, love that is like right there in the flesh. We do not talk about love like this far away concept, like an idea. No, it is not that. It's not a philosophy. Paul was talking to the Corinthians because he knew that all these philosophies and all this, they follow all these teachings. But he was telling them that it's not it. We try to make it sound like so complicated and so high that you have to have this high intelligence to understand what is love. No, love is that person that is next to you. Love is that part of the family who is a relative who is not a Christian, that you're supposed to put it into action. That is love. It is raw. It's in the flesh. It is in you. It is you. The actions that you do, the decisions that you have to make. Love is patient. Love is kind. It's not jealous. It does not brag. It's not arrogant. Does not act unbecomingly. We need that in the church today. It does not seek its own. It's not provoked. It does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes in all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And love never fails. God bless you.